Happy Friday night, everybody. If you made it through the week, I congratulate you, man. Life can be hard sometimes. So props to everyone who gets to hopefully relax this weekend. And I hope I can help out, at least with maybe educating you a little bit on the Warriors, informing you a bit, hopefully entertaining in the process. On the docket for tonight's show, Jonathan Kuminga is going to be discussed largely because a pair of writers with The Athletic mentioned his name in a story about players that may be traded this season. And so, of course, when a Warriors player's name is uttered by anyone else, suddenly it catches fire and it becomes a story for a day or two, even though it's usually much ado about nothing, this case included. I'll explain what I mean. A former Golden State Warriors player, a former NBA star, Gilbert Arenas, made some eyebrow-raising accusations about why Jonathan Kuminga did not get his contract extension. It's a very cynical view, but I'll play it because it is still interesting nonetheless. And as promised, I have for you the defensive ratings. Let me rephrase that because defensive ratings is not correct. I have defensive matchup statistics for all the Golden State Warriors that have played most, if not all, of the first 5 games this season, meaning let's save Stephen Curry, DeAnthony Melton, Andrew Wiggins for another show. But the results may or may not surprise you. There's no surprises at the top, but some of the players struggling defensively, again, may or may not surprise you. If you watch this show, probably will not. But if you're randomly joining us on a Friday night or have randomly come across this show while scrolling through YouTube, welcome to the program. For all the Golden Dazers, welcome back. Let's get into it. Happy Friday night, everybody. Let's talk Warriors defense. Let's talk Jonathan Kuminga, and let's hopefully have a good time. This is the Golden Days.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win. It was a pretty crazy night.
Woo! Let's go. In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Come on and break me off. Cause I get what I want and I like what I see. If you got
the Golden State Warriors are likely in Houston right now, feeling that disgusting humidity. Welcome, everybody, to the Golden Days. I am your host, Cyrus Saatsaz. You can follow me on Threads and Instagram at DogWild. Over on Twitter, my handle is at SurfJournalist, and the program is on all social media platforms at Golden Days Pod. Today's episode is brought to you by the official sponsor of Golden Days, and that is BetOnline. And on that note, want to remind folks, we're currently officially soliciting sponsorships. We're about to hit 3,000 subscribers, which we're super excited about as a new program that's only been around for 3+ months. We're doing good here, and it's time now to expand in terms of partnerships and promoting anyone out there who wants to raise awareness, wants support from this program. Email us if you're looking to sponsor the most viewed and watched Golden State Warriors program online. Warriors24pod@gmail.com is the email address. Warriors24pod@gmail.com. Check us out there. If you are a local business in the San Francisco Bay Area, or regardless, you don't have to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, email us. Let's have a mutually beneficial relationship. But for now, BetOnline, the official sponsor of Golden Days. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL, to entertainment and political props. The election's almost here, folks. All the madness hopefully will be behind us in a matter of days, but you can also win money on that. And side note, this is an opportunity. If you're confident about who's going to win the election, and especially if you think Kamala Harris is going to win, the odds are stacked against her. And that's not based on polling numbers. It's based on how much money is going toward each side from the betting markets. just like with sports. Like the bookies' entire agenda is trying to get an equal amount of bets on each side, and that's how they set the line. So if you really believe that Kamala Harris is going to win the election, put your money where your mouth is, and you'll win big because the odds are in your favor because way more people have put money down on the Republican ticket. The point is, you can bet on all sorts of stuff with BetOnline. So head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And welcome everybody again to the program. What was tough to watch, Antonio Green? I would need some help in regards to what you're referring to. That's why I'm not a singer. I don't know what that meant. Anyways, let's start tonight's show with a Jonathan Kuminga discussion. The reason why his name has been in the news is because Sam Amick of The Athletic and John Hollinger, who I have very little respect for, largely because, besides the fact that as an NBA exec, he was a virtual failure, but he's also the guy who, in 2022, and this is not the only time he has missed the mark this severely, but this is just the prime example of why I have little respect for Hollinger whenever he espouses opinions of any kind. As a source, maybe. I've never seen a reason to not trust him or believe him, but when it comes to his basketball opinions, I do not pay attention, largely because in 2022, he either predicted the Warriors to be, I think, a play-in team or to miss the playoffs altogether. It was absurd. It was embarrassing how hard he missed. And if that was an anomaly, I would give him some leeway. It was not an anomaly. He routinely misses like that. So I don't really care much for Hollinger's opinions when it comes to basketball. And a story like this is a perfect example because he was involved in this piece along with Sam Amick. And I'm going to show you the screen from the Athletics page because I highlighted this is for the YouTube viewers. For the podcast listeners, I will obviously articulate myself as clearly as possible. But in the story, this is one huge part that stuck out to me because until I read this, I wasn't really sure about the finite details, and I never reported it on this show as a result of that. But quote from this is from Sam Amick's story. First and foremost, because I thought this stuck out. Quote: leak sources say the gap between the two sides in negotiations was significant, with Kuminga aiming for an annual salary in the $35 million range, and the Warriors topping out, per Anthony Slater of The Athletic, around $30 million. And obviously, a deal did not get done. So this story was the first time I've seen any specifics in terms of negotiations involving the Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga's agency and team. And I never knew exactly what the nitty gritty details were coming down to. It was $5 million a year. The two sides were not. I don't agree that they were far off, like it was framed in that piece. Yes, over 4 years that comes out to $20 million. But the point is, $5 million a year. That is not a gap that I think is going to eventually lead to Jonathan Kuminga leaving the Golden State Warriors. The other part of that story, though, and again, the huge reason why people are talking about Jonathan Kuminga is because he was mentioned in this article, strictly a column. This was like a listicle type piece where you just have certain names highlighted as individuals who may or may not get traded from certain teams this year. And so, but again, that nugget was interesting, that the two sides were just $5 million apart annually. That's not much when we're talking about NBA salaries. But the paragraph that generated a lot of buzz is this, and I'll read it verbatim and then break it down in terms of why it's somewhat ridiculous that people paid as much attention to this as they did, or why they think because of this column that it's more likely that Kuminga is going to get traded. Most of the information in this piece came from early in the summer, especially the Jimmy Butler part of it. But I'll read you this paragraph and then break it down real fast. Quote: while rival executives believe the Warriors are more willing than ever to include Kuminga in a trade of significant magnitude, the fact remains that they're setting their sights very high in terms of possible targets. One name to monitor is Jimmy Butler, the 35-year-old Miami Heat star who league sources say drew interest from the Warriors during the offseason and who did not come to terms on an extension. Jimmy Butler, by the way, has a player option for next year. We have no idea if he's going to exercise that or aim for one more big deal after this season. He could be an unrestricted free agent this year. I'm sorry, I should have said a quote after extension. I'm sorry if I forgot to do so. But the point is, first of all, I'm always very skeptical when I hear anybody write, according to rival executives, according to a NBA executive. That is so loosely written. Like, the language there is so broad. An executive can mean anyone. And rival can mean any of the other 29 teams. This is called clickbait. All right. This is blatant clickbait when you're writing verbiage like this, saying that anonymous rival executives, usually heavy.com is the one that routinely publishes content like this. But The Athletic, to get those clicks, throwing Jonathan Kuminga borderline under the bus hit by a lot of people now talking about him as a potential trade target, when that paragraph of the story, which is the reason why so many other people are ridiculously going with this in terms of Kuminga being traded, there is nothing new here. Yes, the Warriors would trade Jonathan Kuminga in a trade of significant magnitude. No shit, Sherlock. Now, what does significant magnitude mean? Probably Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know if it means Jimmy Butler. It didn't mean Paul George, because the Warriors were not including him in that deal. It did not mean Lauri Markkanen, because he wasn't included. We don't know if Utah actually wanted him or not, but regardless, he didn't hold that trade up and he wasn't involved in that trade. The point is, if the Warriors are going to trade Jonathan Kuminga, a player that they are very high on, it's going to be for a megastar. Will it be for Jimmy Butler? I think that's one of those, it remains to be seen kind of scenarios. Jimmy Butler, who had a slow start to the season, I don't know exactly how high the Warriors value him. They clearly want him. Would they be willing to trade Jonathan Kuminga for him? That part, I have no idea. I would think no. Who knows? But the point is, this topic was discussed months ago. I had Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report on this show a couple weeks ago, because he wrote a piece about how the Warriors could logistically get Jimmy Butler in a 4-team trade. And he really broke down the details. That was a fantastic episode, by the way. If you just go to, if you're either subscribed to the Golden Days or through the podcast platform or with YouTube, it was about two weeks ago that Pincus was on the program. Terrific show. He is one of the only true cap experts covering the NBA. And again, he laid out in great detail how the Warriors could, in theory, get Jimmy Butler. And we just discussed that ad nauseum. But again, the point is, there is nothing new to report when it comes to Jimmy Butler or the Golden State Warriors or Jonathan Kuminga. Ian in the chat here, let me stop sharing my screen. I'm sorry. Who, if you're going to donate, and good evening, Zal. Good evening, Dino, coming to us live from the Philippines. Hello, Poison Clan 1707. Yes, JK wanted $35 million a year. And if the Warriors were offering 30, they're not that far apart. They're going to hammer out a deal this upcoming offseason. Again, unless there is a massively huge trade. Wink, wink, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Oh, side note, Witch Show was telling you months and months ago that the Bucks were not doing a damn thing this year, that they were going to suck royal booty. Guess who sucks booty right now? It's the Milwaukee Bucks. They're awful. If you want legitimate discussions about a trade and an asset, Giannis Antetokounmpo is far more realistic than Jonathan Kuminga, because he's going to want out of that shit show very soon. The Bucks are an awful team. Doc Rivers is a blatantly overrated head coach. Darvin Ham being an assistant is not doing a damn thing. You see the clear difference between a team like the Bucks with Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham, and then a team like the LA Clippers with Ty Lue and Jeff Van Gundy. It is degrees of separation in regards to coaching talent and acumen, and the Bucks roster is just old. Again, we beat this like a dead horse on this show. The Bucks suck. So if there's a realistic target out there for any trade of any kind, but especially when it comes to the Warriors, Giannis is becoming more and more realistic. You bet your ass I am monitoring that situation very closely. But Kuminga is not going to go anywhere. It would have to be a trade that would blow the Warriors away for him to move. If you donate money in the chat, I'm sure as shit going to read it. I apologize for all the vulgarities tonight. I don't know. I'm going more than usual by my standards. John, is that correct? Or is it Ian? Eon, I apologize. In the chat, dropping 5 ducats. Thank you, sir or miss. Writing, the only reason the Warriors didn't give Jonathan Kuminga $35 million a year is if they want him as a trade piece, in my opinion. 35 is very reasonable given his potential. I think what you're trying to say, and I've heard other people say this as well, is that the Warriors wouldn't give Kuminga that amount of money because he is an easier asset to trade currently with his, $7 million a year contract, which he's currently playing under. And if you attach other assets to him, like some of the $10 million pieces that the Warriors have with all these new players they added, Wiggins is around 25, 26 million. I think the point you're trying to make, Eon, and correct me if I'm wrong, follow up, please, I'll read it, is that by not giving him 35 million, he's actually easier to trade because you can also attach other assets to him to make Kuminga a more lucrative headliner of a trade package. I think that's your insinuation. Correct me if I'm wrong. And maybe that's true. I mean, if the plan is to trade Kuminga, I would buy into that premise. But again, there's nowhere that I have heard that they want to trade Kuminga, that they're unhappy with Kuminga. Joe Lacob, whose opinion is the most important by far, loves Kuminga. So don't count on him being dealt, even if you're one of the haters out there who doesn't like him. And look, whatever, that's your prerogative. I get it. Brian _RT in the chat writing, any growing concerns on DeAnthony Melton's continuous back injury? Nothing that's been discussed. The front office, the coaching staff, they haven't said a thing about that. So not that I know of. I'm sure if you're a fan or someone who monitors the situation closely yourself and you care, yeah, it is concerning. I mean, they gave the entire mid-level exception to an injury-prone 6'3" backup point guard. I don't know if that was the smartest move ever, but hopefully he'll be okay soon. Zol in the chat saying, no for Jimmy Butler, yes for Giannis in terms of a Jonathan Kuminga trade. I'm totally with you. That makes sense. If Jimmy Butler was 5 years younger, whole different story. But Jimmy Butler turning 36 this year, it's a rental that could be a year, could be 6 months, could be 3 years. I mean, who knows? But the risk is just really high. And I'm all about probabilities and making important decisions on a basketball roster. And the probabilities game is not in your favor. Trading a young piece like Kuminga, who just turned 22, for Jimmy Butler, who's regressing as he approaches 36 years of age. So, but that's just me. Niners minded. I'm waiting for that invite. I told you I'd come on your show, man. Say when. Saying Dub Nation, baby. How is it going? Poison Clan adding, Andrew Wiggins is playing tomorrow. I saw a report that said, I believe he is probable for tomorrow's game. He's missed the last two with, I believe, a back strain. I mean, they won those 2 games without him. So, but I can't imagine it hurts to have Wiggins back. I'm sure the Warriors welcome a 6'7" shooting guard who so far has replaced Klay Thompson magnificently. So I think he's going to play tomorrow. Nothing official as far as I've seen yet. Ogie Balthasar, I don't think I've seen you in a while. You've been in the chat before, right? Coming to us from New Zealand. Hello, what is up? Dre Hahn saying, is it true that the 76ers want Kuminga? I saw that report. It came from a valid source, but that same story also said that the Sixers were going to offer KJ Martin. Yeah, there's a clip for that. You're offering KJ Martin for Jonathan Kuminga? Yeah, Jonathan. I mean, are you kidding me? KJ Martin? Get the F out of here, man. What the hell is wrong with you? So no, he's not going to Philly because Philly does not have anything to offer the Warriors in return. So one more thing, and then we're done talking about Jonathan Kuminga. And hopefully you will appreciate the hours of research I put into the defensive matchup statistics that I'm going to present tonight. I also have some really cool team statistics for the Golden State Warriors. They're killing it. The 4-1 record, winning 4 of the first 5, it reflects with the team stats in terms of offense and defense. I'll get to that in just a moment. Ion, I love you, brother. Thank you for the contributions. Adding that I also feel the deal is possible because they said his ideal destination includes the Nets, which have like 10 plus first round picks in the next 3 years. They are probably trying to drive up the price. The Nets will be interesting for a lot of reasons. If you're including Cam Johnson, not the point guard, not the guys putting up all the points, but the big on that team. If Cam Johnson's included in a package that includes, like you said, a lot of first round picks, maybe I think about Kuminga, but my personal feeling is you don't trade Kuminga unless it's a generational talent coming back. We still have no idea what Kuminga's ceiling is, which is the whole reason why I keep clamoring for more minutes, because I want to know who he is as a player. And unless he is playing 25, 30 plus minutes a night, how the hell can anyone judge him? Yet, of course, a lot of people do. So, Ion, you might be right that the negotiations are always a huge part of front office maneuvering, front office daily tasks is dealing with perceptions and realities and values of individual players. You might be onto something right there. But one more time, because Ion, you're dropping a lot of money for these comments to be espoused, and I'll happily do so. One more time writing, I also feel this deal, meaning Kuminga traded, is possible because they said his ideal destination includes the Nets, who also have Ben Simmons. Side note, might be an interesting buyout candidate come February. The Nets may just let him go and let someone else pick him up so they have a meaningful player to play down the stretch of the season. Ben Simmons would probably want to get out of there and play some meaningful minutes somewhere. We shall see. But the Nets, according to Ion, have like 10 plus first round picks in the next 3 years. Is that true, by the way? I know they got some picks back in the dealing they did this offseason, which I already forgot about. Who'd they trade? I already forgot. Anyways, they might have that. You might be right. But that they were probably trying to drive up the price. Olgi Balthazar, who just wrote a moment ago from New Zealand, asking, what's your analysis on the Rockets game tomorrow? They're a tough team. Well, we'll get into that in just a moment. I'll save that for later in the show because I want to stay on track right now. We've got some topics to cover here. And then MDAA writing, Kuminga, shaking my head, is a great athlete, but not a great player based on his size and skill set. Remember, he's 22 years old, just turned 22. He's never been higher than 7th on the team in minutes. All I ask of anyone is just hold off and coming to conclusions about this kid until he gets a real run. Because every time he actually does play significant minutes, like the type of minutes literally every one of his, or Alma, I don't want to say literally, but the vast majority of his draft classmates from the 2021 draft, they're almost all getting 30 plus minutes a night. And by now, you have a pretty good idea who these players are. Jonathan Kuminga last year was by far the most minutes he's ever averaged, which was like 26, I believe. He's currently averaging 23 minutes per game. Last year, when he was 7th on the team in minutes, let me look that up real fast because I don't have that on me off the cuff. Last year, he averaged 26.4 minutes per game. Good improvement. And as a result of that, his scoring went up, his rebounding went up, his stats across the board went up. And that's from 26.4. Why not see 30? Why not give the kid a chance? They do succeed when he plays a lot. But my whole point is, like, until we actually see a consistent run where faith is given to him, where a leash is taken off, I don't know how you can come up with conclusions on this kid. You can't. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be amazing. I'm saying I think he will. The potential is there. I just want him to have a chance. Traveling Arquides in the chat writing, I really think Jonathan Kuminga is going to be dealt this year. The Nets, the Heat, and the Bucks interested. It's possible, but let's just hope that it's for a really talented player. And again, I don't have an opinion yet on Kuminga for Jimmy Butler. Not a strong one. my initial impression is don't do it. Again, just because of how young Kuminga is, how old Jimmy Butler is, and the fact that Jimmy Butler is not at the peak of his powers anymore. 0011 writing, JK needs to improve his three-point shot to a certain degree. Yes, he's a career 33.7% three-point shooter. Last year, he shot 32.1. The year before that, he shot 37. But keep in mind, he's a 33.6%, I apologize, three-point shooter. Jonathan Kuminga is in the same class as what Michael Jordan was, as what Kobe Bryant was, as what LeBron James was. And those are three of the all-time greats who played a similar position to what Jonathan Kuminga wants to play. Again, if he can keep the three-point percentage at 33, but improve significantly the rest of his game, I don't know if it's needed, but that's just me. And Traveling Urquida is adding that Giannis would be amazing. Now, the last thing about Kuminga before we move on, this is from Gilbert Arenas' show. And the topic came up of Jonathan Kuminga. And I'm not going to play the whole clip because the whole thing's like 12 minutes. I'll play the first minute or two because you're going to get the gist of what Gilbert Arenas is making a case for. It's very interesting. It's also very cynical. It's not true either as far as we know, but it does fit in with what Ian was saying a little bit in the chat earlier. And it has to do with the value of individuals and driving up someone's price. Let's hear from Gilbert Arenas talking about why Jonathan Kuminga did not get a contract extension this offseason.
Do you understand Kerr's reasoning for moving Kuminga to the bench against the Pelicans? They won the game.
100%. I understand 1,000%, and I said it when we talked about this before. If he don't sign that contract, his ass is going to that bench, and he's going to be worth a six-man value. If he would have signed that contract, what they wanted, he would have been starting, doing everything he wanted to do. But because they haven't came up to the number that they both wanted, they're going to bring him off the bench. And whatever he does off the bench is going to be capped off at a six-man, and that's what he's going to be worth. Now, you're telling me, and you want a basketball player to say, your first option and your second option is not here, we going to bench the third option?
You're not going to be our first option?
Where does that happen at?
For spacing, Gil.
No. Where does that happen in basketball?
Nowhere.
My first two, this is like going to Phoenix. Kevin Durant, out. Booker, out. Beal, off the bench. What?
Excuse me?
What?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Because I'm scared he's going to go out there and have 40. I'm scared he's going to go out there and try to carry the team and keep his value.
Has he been playing well?
Solid.
He's playing with the team.
What would you think he was going to do? What do you think he was going to do if Wiggins and...
I don't know. I mean, he hasn't been playing well, though.
What I'm saying, have you seen it when Steph ain't in the court? Steph and Wiggins is gone. Who gets the ball? They started two people who shot one shot and three shots. Who you think was shooting the ball?
I saw the other night.
I don't want him to score 4.
I saw the other night when Steph went in the game and Wiggins was hooping. 29.
Kuminga wasn't doing nothing. In those first 3 games, I think he was averaging like 8 points.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You ain't ready.
This was his best game.
I don't think he's ready.
Two players are not there. What do you think he was going to do?
I don't think he's ready is what I'm saying. Brandon. We played 4 games, you having 8 points, and you wanted us to give you $150 million?
Brandon, I told y'all this.
Nice kid, like good kid, nice kid, but I
said what? Run. It's a burning building. It's going to crumble on your head. You're going to take the blame.
So if
you take this contract.
First 3 games this season, he was averaging 8 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist.
Y'all telling me he gonna
playing 20 minutes a game, played a season high 28.
He played a season high 28 coming off the bench.
Off the bench, had his best game of the season.
They put in a guy who had 1 shot.
And he's playing.
There was a man who took 1 shot in the game.
No, what?
Last year, that was his stats?
No, for the start of this season.
So first he's playing 28 games, 28 minutes, averaging 8 points.
No, so he was playing 20 minutes in the first 3 games. Averaging 8 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist.
20 minutes.
But did you?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You see what that?
But did you hear how Steve Kerr tried to make the world believe this is how coaches are supposed to coach a player? Do you see how he made it look like
He might be trying to
this
spark a
is
fire.
how you coach a guy who you don't know where to put him,
I know where to put
and
him.
you know you can't pay him.
Average-
So this is how politely you say, oh yeah, I went up to him before the game and I told him, we're just gonna try some stuff out. Let me think, if Steve Kerr is this a Hall of Fame coach as everybody thinks he is, right? Why are you adjusting the teams that ain't even figured y'all out yet? You're going out here saying you're adjusting and switching things up.
All
What
right.
happened to them
It's
just
getting
adjusting to
off
y'all?
topic now. I love that. Go.
What happened?
I apologize for that, but you got the gist. And Gilbert Arenas, again, conspiracy theory, very cynical approach, making the argument that the reason why Jonathan Kuminga is coming off the bench is so that the Warriors can lower his value, given sixth men don't get contracts as big as starters. Incredibly cynical. I don't know who the third guy was holding the bat. I'm sure folks in the audience are better acquainted with that show than I am. But I don't buy that, is what I'm trying to say. I don't buy that at all. And again, I don't know who the guy with the bat was. You've heard me being critical of Kerr. I think even he was way further than I would agree with. But again, I don't think Jonathan Kuminga is getting benched to lower his value. If that's the case, that would colossally suck. And it would, I think it would force a lot of people to reevaluate how they view a lot of Warriors coaches and execs, but I don't buy that. And Gamer FTP saying that Gilbert Arenas doesn't like the Warriors. Is that true? I never got that vibe that he's a diehard Laker fan. Anyways, so I just wanted to finish up by playing that, just because even though it's not rooted in reality, fairly prominent individuals are putting it out there. So I just wanted to touch on it for a second before we move on. So, but again, to summarize everything for the first, already 30 minutes. I apologize. For the first 30 minutes of this show, Jonathan Kuminga is likely not going anywhere unless it's for a huge superstar. We don't know if Jimmy Butler qualifies as that huge superstar. Giannis Antetokounmpo, sure as you know what, would qualify as that superstar. Someone in the chat asked me who I would hypothetically trade for Giannis on the Warriors roster. I'll touch on that at the end of the show, if you don't mind. I just want to move on real fast to other topics of discussion. One of those is Draymond Green, who I think has been playing fantastic basketball to start the year. The Clippers game clearly not included. That was an ugly game for a lot of people. But Draymond Green has said that he wants to at least be in the discussion for Defensive Player of the Year this year. And I love it. I love it. He deserves more than one that he's won. He's a former Defensive Player of the Year award winner. This was back in I think 2017, somewhere in that range. He's deserved it way more than once. The fact that Rudy Gobert has 4 drives me insane. That to me is symbolic of how flawed the voting system is for all these awards. To put it in perspective for you, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we get a whopping total of 1 vote. That doesn't count someone like Mark Spears, who's from the Bay Area, but he's a national writer. He might get, I'm guessing he gets a vote. I don't know. But here in the Bay Area, we get 1. And that 1 vote is shared between the San Francisco Chronicle and the San Jose Mercury News. And the sports editor of each paper takes turns. Usually they let the beat reporter covering the team submit that vote. It's ridiculous. It is asinine who they let vote for this thing. And because a lot of these people voting just have no freaking idea what they're talking about or doing. Mark Jackson, for example, was busted a couple years ago, I believe, not voting Jokic for MVP when it was one of those obvious seasons. And I forgot who he voted for, but it became a controversy. And the point is, the voting system is incredibly flawed. The fact that Draymond Green only has 1 Defensive Player of the Year award is a perfect example of that. And Draymond, following the second of the back-to-back set with the Pelicans, talked about that. And he talked about it in great detail. This is the first I've seen of it. And I've heard it, obviously, in show prep, but I finally saw this today, and I was really exalted and excited to play it on the show. So here is Draymond Green talking about wanting to be in the discussion for Defensive Player of the Year.
I wanted to come into this season in great shape. I know when I come into this season in great shape, that is the key to me having a great season. That is the key to this team having a great season. And, spend all summer of watching everyone talk about Chet and Wemby and what they're doing defensively. Don't forget about Dre, So I want to be in that conversation as well, and I think I've earned the right to at least be in the conversation. So every game I'm coming out here motivated defensively to get back on the first team on defense. I think I had a really good year last year defensively. I just didn't play enough games, so it's a goal of mine to get on that team and then put myself back in the Defensive Player of the Year category.
And that's awesome. So the fact that he's motivated to do that, it is a little weird hearing that he's like, I came into camp in great shape. It's like, are you not doing that every year? It's like, why did you focus on being in shape coming into camp this year? Like, why did you make that point? Because all I heard was, wait a second, you don't do that every year? Like, what are you doing? But anyway, so Draymond Green is hopefully going to be motivated and pumped to maybe play harder than usual, motivated by an individual award that, again, it is a farce that Rudy Gobert has 4 of them when Draymond Green, who will go down as one of the greatest defenders this game has ever seen, he already is, in my opinion, only has 1 Defensive Player of the Year award. Kind of crazy. I showed this on the screen while Draymond was talking, but for the podcast listeners, this is an interesting point by Damian LaRoche. Great to see a friend writing that Matt Barnes on his show, All the Smoke. Side note, I'm working on getting Barnes and Steven Jackson on this program, hopefully soon. It is in the works. And I love both those two guys tremendously, and hopefully it'll be like a separate thing, like one and then another time the other. Anyways, so Matt Barnes on his podcast, All the Smoke with Steven Jackson, according to Damian, saying that Matt Barnes confessed he was treated that way by Don Nelson. Barnes, in case anyone forgot, was part of the We Believe Warriors in the first part of the decade, and then was part of a title team. I think was he on the 17 roster, maybe 17 and 18? I can't remember off the top of my head. But Matt Barnes, again, he's been a part of quite a few legendary Warriors teams. And this is crazy what you're writing, Damian, that Barnes confessed that Don Nelson treated him that way when he did not re-sign with the Warriors, that he was benched to tank his value. I would be curious to know if that's what Barnes thinks happens, or if in fact he knows that that it was true, that they intentionally benched him to tank his value. That's kind of crazy. Anyways, I just want to see CA Bruin writing the 06-07 Warriors the first time that Barnes was there, right? And was he not part of 07-08? Maybe he wasn't. Anyways, so that's it for the Kuminga and the Draymond defense talk. Now, it's time to talk about who the hell is playing defense on this team, who's actually doing well. And these are the defensive matchup statistics. The only statistics when it comes to defense that I give any shits about. It's the only stat on defense that I trust in terms of painting an accurate picture of an individual's defensive performance. Because defensive rating, which is what a lot of people use, is insanely flawed. It's a mathematical formula that somebody put together, and based on this calculation, you get defensive rating. And I've said this before, and I'm sorry for sounding like a broken record. Stephen Curry 2 years ago was the number 1 defensive rated guard in the entire NBA. I have nothing against that, but and no disrespect to Stephen Curry, I think he's always been underrated as a defender, and he's playing this year fantastic defense on top of every year he's played. With that said, is he the best defender in the NBA? No, no. But he was number 1 among all guards in defensive rating. So I gave up on that stat. I'm like, this is not something I'm going to rely on to determine if a player is actually playing good defense. What does help that determination are defensive matchup statistics. And the NBA does a phenomenal job compiling this data. They don't do a phenomenal job publishing this data for the world to see. It's part of a page called NBA Stats. The NBA publishes this page themselves. And so every once in a while, I go through it. You have to literally compile data from each individual. And these are your leaders in terms of defensive matchups by field goal percentage. The stats you're going to see, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see the numbers scrolling down below. I'll obviously articulate this for the podcast audience. And what you're going to see is with each individual player, the stats are going to show how opposing players that they defend are shooting in terms of field goal percentage, in terms of 3-point percentage, and I also included how many turnovers they've caused this year. And the order is going to be in reverse from the player that has given up the highest field goal percentage to the player that has given up the lowest field goal percentage. These numbers reflect reality much more so later in the season when the sample size is bigger than 5 games. But you do start to see some things. Like, for example, I'm going to include a couple extra pieces of data pertaining to how Kevon Looney and Trayce Jackson-Davis guarded, for example, Zubac in that Clippers game. It was awful, right? So I also picked out a few things like that to include. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat real fast before we move on. No, we're good. All right. So here are your defensive matchup stats going in reverse order from worst to best. And then I'm going to finish up the show by giving you the Warriors net rating stats as a team, both offensively and defensively, compared to the rest of the competition in the NBA. So first up, in terms of defense, this is the player that has given up the worst field goal percentage in the NBA. The position he plays does factor into this, and that's Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's given up the players that he guards this season have made 54.9% of their field goals. Now, this number plummets when it comes to three-point shooting, largely because Trayce Jackson-Davis primarily is guarding bigs. He's guarding centers. The Pelicans game not included because he was also guarding Brandon Ingram for decent chunks out there, and I thought he was doing a good job of that. But because Trayce Jackson-Davis guards opposing bigs and the center position routinely has the highest field goal percentage given their height, given their proximity to the rim, where they play on the floor, you need to keep that into consideration with these defensive matchup numbers for bigs. So again, Trayce Jackson-Davis, opposing players that he defends shoot 54.9% from the field, 27.3% from deep. He's also forced 9 turnovers from the opposition. And with Trayce Jackson-Davis, I also included the stats from how he guarded Zubac in that third game of the season when the Warriors lost to the Clippers. Zubac was 4 of 7 from the field when guarded by Trayce Jackson-Davis. So he was hitting better than 50% of his shots. And then Zion Williamson was 2 of 3 from the field when guarded by Trayce Jackson-Davis. Next up, a little surprising in terms of next up, but he also has a very positive stat to go with the reason why he is the second lowest name on this list, and that is Lindy Waters III. Opposing players have hit 50% of their field goals when guarded by Waters. Now, the good news, only 18.2% of opposition three-point shots are going down when Lindy Waters is guarding them. So what you can take from this is Lindy's interior defense has had mixed results, not particularly great, but his perimeter defense has been fantastic. And a lot of that has to do with his length. He's a legit 6'6". There's no exaggerating that. Lindy Waters has also forced 6 turnovers this season. Now, this one is very disappointing in terms of where it is, but it's also not surprising, especially if you've heard me on a consistent basis on this show talk about how Gary Payton II should only be playing very specific matchups. Offensively, he's a borderline liability. With a team this deep, I personally just don't see what the role is for GP2 outside of very specific matchups against superstar players on the other side that GP2 can handle. Luka Doncic being a prime example, like the Anthony Edwards of the world. It would have been nice if he was guarding James Harden with a more lockdown basis, but that did not happen, unfortunately. And these stats reflect how GP2 has fallen as a defender. Now, look, it's only 5 games, and I'm sure these numbers will improve to a certain extent, but by his standards, this is bad. GP2 is when defending opposing players, they've shot 48% on him. Now, that number does drop on the perimeter to 30.3%, which is good, but it's not great. And it reflects, again, GP2 just not having that same impact on the court. I don't know if age has something to do with it. I don't know if maybe the injuries are causing him to hesitate a little more. That does happen with a lot of individuals who routinely experience injuries. You don't want to get hurt anymore. And so you start playing a little more cautiously. Who knows? But his numbers have dropped this season defensively. He has forced a turnover, so that's a good number. Jonathan Kuminga, right in the middle of the pack, is next on the list. For those out there who have criticized his defense, these numbers justify that criticism. He's given up 44.1% of opposing field goals, which is so-so at best. 38.9% from deep. That's not good. That means when he's defending the perimeter, opposing players are hitting their threes at a healthy enough clip to be concerning. He has forced 9 turnovers, but Kuminga playing average at best defense to start the year. Indefensible. Kevon Looney, excuse me, is next up on the list. And Looney has interesting numbers. He's given up 41.5% in terms of field goal percentage on players he defends. That number drops to 20 for three-point percentage. And again, that's normal because he's a big. He's routinely guarding other bigs. Other bigs are not notorious for being prolific outside shooters. Kevon Looney has also forced 9 turnovers this year. The part that's discouraging, Zubac, again, was scoring at will when he was defended by Looney. He was 3 of 4 from the field in that Clippers game. Zion Williamson was defended predominantly by Kevon Looney. He had 10 field goal attempts when guarded by Looney, made 5 of them, 50% of his shots there. Again, not good. The point is, this substantiates to a certain degree what I've been saying about Kevon Looney. He struggles defending higher talent bigs in this game, especially those that have a good offensive skill set. So we'll see how that number goes on. Brandon Podziemski is next up. Players he defends have hit 40.7% of their field goals this season. That number is 35.3% from deep. Good, not great. He's also forced 10 turnovers. So the stats show that Podziemski's doing a good job. Not great. You're not going to get on any all-NBA first teams with that kind of defense, but he's not a liability on his team defensively either. Your top 3, and again, I didn't bother with Steph or DeAnthony Melton or Andrew Wiggins, given they missed the last 2 games. 3 games is just not a lot. Neither is 5, but 3 is just ridiculous. And so next time I compile the data, we'll include those players. But with those 3 excluded, your top 3, at number 3 is Moses Moody, who has had a fantastic start to the season on both offense and defense. But his defense has been stellar. Opposing players are shooting 37.1% from the field when they're guarded by Moses Moody. That number plummets to 20% when it comes to three-point shooting. Moses Moody is primarily guarding perimeter players. So the fact that opposing players, when they're guarded by Moses Moody, are hitting just 20% of their threes, that's awesome. And again, Moses Moody has like a 7'2" wingspan, and the defensive stats are reflecting his length, the work he put in this offseason. Moses Moody has just been a beautiful story for the Warriors to start the season. I'm personally ecstatic that he got his extension, and hopefully he won't go anywhere for a long time. Number 2 on the list is Draymond Green. I should probably read the chat just in case. I'm not muted, am I? Okay, good. Number 2 is Draymond Green, right? And that makes sense. Draymond Green, when he defends opposing players, they hit 35.3% of their field goals. That number is slightly down to 33.3% for threes, which is okay, right? I mean, in the same vein that hitting 33% of your threes equates to 50% of your twos, it's passable. On defense, same logic, right? It's okay that he's holding opposing wings to 33% shooting, 33.3%, but it's not great either. But he has forced 11 turnovers. That is a good number. So Draymond Green being number 2 on this list should not be surprising for obvious reasons. Now, who's number 1 is a little surprising until you consider the fact that he routinely has solid net rating numbers. He's notorious for having a very high basketball IQ. And his contributions don't show up on the box score that often. And that's what great defenders do. And number one on the list is Kyle Anderson, Mr. Slow-Mo. Players he defends have shot just 33.3% from the field total. Now that number goes up a little bit for 3-point shooting. It's at 40%. And who knows what the reasoning is for that? It could be mismatches. But he's forced 13 turnovers as well. That's a fantastic number. So those are your defensive matchup statistics for the Golden State Warriors through 5 games this season. And I want to see if there's anything in the chat, any questions, just comments on the list. Okay. And then last but not least, and then there's a couple things in the chat I'll address, and we'll call it a wrap on this Friday night. Happy Friday evening, everybody. Congrats on making it through another week, man. Weeks can be long and torturous. For me, at least, it felt like this week was no exception to that. So the stats that I have remaining pertain to the actual team and how they're doing. The Warriors, as a collective, are second in the NBA in defensive rating. Now, what defensive rating means is the amount of points you give up per 100 possessions. And the Warriors give up 98.4 points per game per 100 possessions. That is second in the NBA. The OKC Thunder are first with a 91.3, and they're playing incredible basketball. And then another team that's playing great ball. And unfortunately for the Warriors, they got to play both these teams on this upcoming road trip, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are third with a 105.7. Notice how much that number jumps between number 2 and number 3. Again, the Warriors second in the NBA in defensive rating at 98.4. 105.7 is third, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. And again, you could also make the argument, if you're a Thunder fan, well, take a look at the gap between number 1 and number 2. Yeah, the Thunder are playing unbelievable defense. Offensively, the Golden State Warriors, though, are ahead of the Thunder. They're fourth overall in net rating, which, look, that's insane. To be number 2 on defense and number 4 on offense, that's absurd. Championship contending teams put up these kinds of numbers. And the Warriors are fourth in the NBA in offensive rating. They're at 118.6, meaning they average 118.6 points per 100 possessions. And again, the Warriors are fourth in the NBA in offensive rating. Number 1 currently, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are third on defense, first on offense, with a rating of the graphic says 113.4. That should say 123.4. My apologies for that. The Boston Celtics are 2 in total offense with 123.1. The New York Knicks, a little surprising, at number 3 with 119.6. And then the Warriors, again, are fourth in offensive rating with 118.6. And it drives me so crazy that I mistyped that. Let me fix that real fast, just so the graphic can look a little better. There we go. Now it's correct. So again, one more time, the Cleveland Cavaliers, 123.4, Boston, 123.1, the Knicks, 119.6, and the Golden State Warriors, fourth in offensive rating. Again, points per 100 possessions at 118.6. And then net rating reflects the difference in those two numbers, right? And that represents basically how much you're outscoring teams on a night-by-night basis. The Golden State Warriors, first, number 1 in the NBA in total net rating with a plus 20.4. The Cleveland Cavaliers, second at plus 18.2. The OKC Thunder rounding out the top 3, plus 17.5. And again, that just goes to show how difficult of a road trip the Golden State Warriors have coming up for themselves. That Houston game is particularly important for that reason, because the Warriors are going to play the Houston Rockets tomorrow night. Paulie Mack is joining me, by the way. That should be a fun show, hopefully, if the Warriors win. If not, we'll still have a good time, hopefully. So they play the Houston Rockets. They play the Washington Wizards. Flat out a must-win game. And then that 3-game set, just a nightmarish row of teams. I mean, we're talking Cleveland, we're talking Boston, and we're talking OKC. That is a murderer's row if there's ever been one on a road trip. So we shall see what happens. That is your data on how the Warriors are doing defensively, individually, and collectively, in addition to offense and net rating. Kong is saying, I feel my brain moving around in my head from all the numbers. Yeah, a lot of data. I'm sorry if I bored some of you with that. And then a couple things in the chat to wrap things up. Where is it? Bruce RT. I told you I'd get back to you. Writing in the chat, if the Warriors do trade for Giannis, what would be the ideal trade package? And there's going to be, and I think you also asked about a Warriors Rockets preview. I'll do that real fast for you. I mean, look, if it does come down to it, where the Bucks are going to trade Giannis, on one hand, they're going to want the house, and it's justifiable because it's Giannis Antetokounmpo, a player that's going to go down as one of the greatest, who's still in his prime at 30 years old. On the other hand, you also know full well that Giannis wants out, and the Bucks are going to play the PR game. They don't want to look like total a-holes in terms of how they treat Giannis. And unfortunately for them, that takes away a lot of leverage in trade negotiations, meaning every other team out there will know that Giannis wants out and that the Bucks are going to adhere to his wishes sooner than later. And so what it's going to come down to then is competing against other teams. A team like OKC, for example, probably won't have the assets in terms of an individual potential superstar type player like a Jonathan Kuminga. And please note, I said potential. He's not a superstar now, clearly. But that is a huge advantage the Warriors have. They have young pieces who you kind of know what you're going to get to a certain extent. Whereas with future draft picks, you don't really know like where you're going to be drafting. You don't know if that draft is going to be weak or strong. A sure thing usually carries significant weight when it comes to trade negotiations. And so for the Warriors to have that in Kuminga, maybe Podziemski, maybe Trace Jackson Davis, maybe Moses Moody. If I'm the Warriors, I would tell Milwaukee, take 3 of the 4. You can't get all 4. We need to have some talent here still to win with. But I would guess it would come down to, again, 3 of those 4 young pieces, plus I think the Warriors will have 3 first-round picks to give up, plus a pick swap that I think the Warriors can also throw in there. And that'll be your trade. And then maybe to make salaries work, you also have to throw in Wiggins. And that should be enough at that point. When you're matching salaries for a trade, it has to get within 75%. So that would be my prediction. Could be totally wrong. Again, this is just a complete guess. But that would be what I would think is how that would go down in terms of the Warriors trying to make a trade with the Bucks. And again, the Warriors do have an advantage in terms of players that are more ready to go than a future draft pick, meaning you can give Milwaukee pieces that the fans can come to start watching and following now. And that does matter because you don't want to just have your fan base hate you for trading a generational player that's adored in that community, right? So for the idea of getting talent back that you have faces attached to now is leverage for the Warriors. And it gives them a slight edge over a team like OKC. Same with San Antonio. That's a team a lot of people talking about in terms of having a buttload of assets, more specifically draft picks, but they don't really have anyone like a Kuminga or like a Podziemski either. So that's why I think the Warriors ultimately have a shot to get Giannis if they really want him, because it's not just draft picks they're offering. It's players who can play now, and it's players who have undetermined ceilings. And that carries a lot of value as well. So we shall see. And I love how, like, after revealing who I think the Warriors will trade to get him, you suddenly have folks in the chat saying, no, we don't need Giannis. We're good. Let's just scrap that idea altogether. Derek Simmons adding that this team might be good enough as is. Derek, I agree with you in this, in the sense that what the Warriors have now presents a lot of optimism, because this team resembles 2014-15 a lot, at least to me. And the good news is there's no rush. I mean, the Bucks are not going to trade Giannis tomorrow. If that happened, it would either be around February at the trade deadline or next offseason. So yeah, I hear you, all you folks. And Gamer F2P, who writes, you give up like your entire bench. The other side of that coin, though, is this. Yes, you're giving up, you're mortgaging your future for the present, right? But Giannis will be good for the next 5+ years. You have that going for you if you decide to, again, give up all these assets for him. You're also going to go from a team that could get some good free agents, right? The Warriors got DeAnthony Melton. I still think spending your entire mid-level exception on him might come back to bite him in the ass a little bit. We shall see. But you were able to get him. You were able to get Buddy Hield, who actually chose the Warriors over the Lakers because he thought the Warriors had a better chance of winning. With that said, this has not been a destination to ideally recruit the type of free agents that would be willing to give up money to play for a team, right? The Lakers are a prime example of this. You have a lot of players who sacrifice dollars to play on a LeBron James-led team. You add Giannis Antetokounmpo to this Warriors squad, you're going to fill your bench with a lot of talented veterans, like a lot. And not just, scraps off the side of the road. We're talking like guys that would normally get big mid-level exception deals, but who instead, seeing a team in front of them that has Steph, that has Giannis, that has maybe Wiggins still, if you don't trade him, that has Steph, Dre, Looney, and Giannis. Like when you have a core like that, you can probably have a far easier time recruiting free agents that have significant quality to them. With that said, I totally hear you. If the price is too high, I totally hear you. Damian LaRoche adding, you could pay Kuminga if he wants the max if you don't include him in a trade. And again, the rookie max is worth noting. Like Jonathan Kuminga's max is very different from, let's say, Giannis or Steph's max. Like Kuminga's max is $35 million a year. Steph's max is $60 million a year. So there are different levels to this depending on experience. Yeah. And that's it. Anything else we need to cover? Oh, and one last thing. Warriors and Rockets, they play tomorrow. In terms of a preview, I mean, look, the Rockets are a very deep team. They rival the Golden State Warriors. They're not better. They're not deeper, but they rival the Warriors in terms of being able to dip into your bench and go damn near 10 deep with starter quality. To give you some perspective on that, the Rockets will likely tomorrow start Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, another player who is far from proven but did get a max. And keep that in mind too when you're thinking about Jonathan Kuminga wanting a max extension as an unproven player. All he's doing is what his agent is telling him to do, which is look at what all of your draft classmates got. None of them are better than you. Hardly any of them have done anything in this game, yet they're all getting max contracts. Why shouldn't you get a max contract? And when the agent is presenting that sort of logic to Kuminga, he's going to want the max. He's seeing players around him in his same draft class getting that money while being similarly unproven in most cases, not all. And that is his reasoning and rationale for wanting the max. You can't blame him. Like you can't be upset at Kuminga for wanting the same amount of money that his draft classmates want. You could obviously feel differently about the amount, but I'm just trying to explain Kuminga's perspective in all this, that this is how rookies roll, especially if you're a highly touted lottery pick type rookie. When it comes time for your extension, proven or not, unless you're like a Killian Hayes type that has shown very quickly you're not cut out for this game, you're going to probably ask and want for a max extension, and you're probably going to get it. But we shall see. Bruce Morrow saying his agent is lying to him. But he's not, though. Look at what Franz Wagner got. Look at what Jalen Green got. Look at what Alperen Sengun got. Sengun's a poor example in the sense that he's contributing already, but Sengun was drafted after Kuminga. It's not unreasonable of a request. It's just, if you're the Warriors, you could understand them wanting to wait, right? And you can, and look, the Warriors, as we learned at the beginning of the show, courtesy of that article, by Sam Amick, the Warriors did offer $30 million a year. The difference between what the Warriors offered and what Kuminga wanted was $5 million, which, again, by NBA player negotiation standards, not that much. That's a difference that they will figure it out this offseason. I'm not too worried about that. But the Houston Rockets, Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., unproven, but the kid has potential, and then Alperen Sengun rounds out your 5. Bigger team. That front court might give the Warriors some problems. Again, as you heard, if you were listening to the show or watching the show during the middle part, where I read off all the defensive matchup statistics, both Trayce Jackson-Davis and Kevon Looney not putting up great numbers defensively. So a player like Alperen Sengun could be munching on some fried chicken, an unlimited bucket. That might be happening. So be prepared for that. And then their bench, Reed Shepherd, who I've not been watching closely. I'm very curious to see him play tomorrow because there's a lot of hype surrounding this kid, particularly as a shooter. Cam Whitmore, that dude is a beast, and that is someone you want Kuminga matching up with. I'm actually very excited to see those two play against each other. They also have Amen Thompson, one of the Thompson twins, notorious for being a solid defender while developing his offensive game. Tari Eason can play. And they also have Jacques Lindell coming off the bench, who I know is not a big name as a center, but he's given the Warriors problems in the past. So I'm very curious to see how Trayce Jackson-Davis and Kevon Looney and Draymond Green and Kyle Anderson, your front court, handles their front court, which is pretty damn big and mean. They also have Jeff Green on that team. So we shall see. I mean, it could be a scenario like the Clippers game where, the Clippers are also a deep team, but they also have size. I mean, Zubac was the difference in that game. Maybe Sengun reminds the Warriors, hey, look, you need one more piece, right? We shall find out. But I'm damn curious. It should be a good game. Should be entertaining. And what the fashion saying that Wiggins is back tomorrow, is that official? I keep seeing probable. I haven't really seen anywhere that says he's for sure playing, but so many people in the chat have said that. I trust you. I'll believe that to be true, and he likely will. I mean, I think he was questionable for the second of those Pelicans Warriors back-to-backs, and probably would have played if it was a playoff game. So it wouldn't surprise me. It would surprise me if we see Wiggins. Damian LaRoche, look, you're a Golden Dazer. You pay the $2.99 a month for requests like this. You ask and you shall receive. You're asking for that same music that I played the other night with Larry Krueger. And here it is, the stripper music. Thank you very much for joining me. The strip club music. Thank you very much for joining me as always. Luke Ness asking, do you think Kuminga is going to bounce back? He's bounced back the last 2 games. Jonathan Kuminga's game log, I mean, his first 3 games were yes, I would say borderline awful. It was bad. Good news is they won those first 2 games, so it didn't matter. But the last 2 games, I mean, he played 28 minutes against the Pelicans the first go around, had 17 points, 3 boards, even hit a 3-pointer, which has been a really huge struggle in his game to start the season. And then in the second game, he played 27 minutes, had 16 points, 4 rebounds, was efficient as a shooter in both those games, 6 of 13 from the field in the first one, 6 of 12 in the second one. I also thought he played fantastic defense on Brandon Ingram, probably improved his numbers from the first 3 games. I think he's coming around. The last 2 games have been a lot of has brought a lot of optimism when it comes to Jonathan Kuminga. And that's it. Go have yourself a fun Friday night. Go have yourself a beautiful weekend. Join us tomorrow night. Paul McCaffrey, aka Paulie Maxson, to join me. Warriors Rockets post game. Let's hope the good vibes and the success continues. Damian, you know it, brother. You're very welcome. Thank you for the tip. The DJ is in the house. Coming up, it's Vanity on the stage. Ooh, Vanity's making that extra loop and an extra spin on that pole. Cup of Destiny. Go throw your money down at her. I might have done that too accurately. Have a great evening, or maybe I did it horribly. I don't know. Hope you have a great night, folks. Thank you as always. Bye-bye.